In today's episode of the Pathfund Presents podcast, I got a very interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Rob Patey, and he's hailing over from the folks over at Balyo. And if you head over to balyo.com, you will see it's autonomous robots for load movements. Very interesting topic, very interesting machines. So yeah, let's deep dive into it and learn more. So Rob, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Lucas. I appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. So maybe give people like a quick overview, 360. What is Balyo all about in your own words?
Absolutely. So Balyo builds autonomous robots for materials handling and pallet movement. So essentially, we take standard forklifts, your manually operated forklifts, and we roboticize them. We basically turn them into a driverless workforce.
That makes a lot of sense. Tell us a little bit about sort of the application areas. It seems obvious, but is there certain like type of businesses, industries, warehouses, and the likes that would leverage you guys more than others?
It's obvious and it's as broad as you can go as well. So we absolutely help manufacturing environments, warehouses, across all industries that essentially have pallet movement within their facilities. And specifically, we are I would say, the experts in high bay storage abilities. So, there's two different applications when you're moving. Well, in general, there's two different applications when you're moving in a warehouse, right? You're either moving across the floor or you're moving into the racks. And Balyo has excelled in the technology that moves high tonnage into very high spaces.
Gotcha. Very good. Now, who would you say within those businesses is actually the one that is, figuring out that this should be automated? Would that be sort of, an operational lead? Does it come from the C-suite? Does it come from, requests from the floor? Like, who is bringing this technology into the building?
Sure. Primarily, it's your director level, right? It's your warehouse director, it's your warehouse manager, depending upon the size of the organization. That's really trying to deal right now with staff shortages, trying to move more materials in less time in a more methodical and planned manner. We can absolutely help your warehouse managers. The C-suite has obviously a say in the conversation. They're the ones that are always driving for innovation. They're the ones that are always trying to excel. But that melding of the practicality and the needs of the warehouse with that vision traditionally falls in that director level, right? They've got to manage up and they've got to manage down.
Very good. Now, these folks, how do they learn about you guys though? Like, is that how would you describe their journey? What are the touch points that you have with you guys, might it be online or offline, that they have with Balyo?
It's a combination, right? It's as with any industry these days. It's a combination of going to trade shows, trying to learn about things there, as well as within, the materials handling, the manufacturing, the logistics industry. There are a ton of trade publications. I just received a list from one of the trade shows we're going to, and there's literally over 600 different publications that are on this list, and probably 3 or 4 contacts. I mean, it's a day's activity just to kind of sift through all the names and see, all the reporters and media that are out there. But of course, there's that end destination of your website, right? Any advertising is only as good as the experience after the click. So yeah, the website, of course, is an essential hub. Once you make people, the awareness activities to let people know you're out there.
Now, when you mentioned the website there, how do you think about the page in terms of, its strengths or its room for improvement? We got a lot of people coming to the show that, obviously the website is a ever evolving piece of work. Where do you currently see strengths on Balyo.com versus where do you see maybe some, excitement or opportunity for further development?
Sure, absolutely. Balyo, we are absolutely using 2023 to up our level of content on the site, right? I think you can go there, you can get all the facts you need about what the vehicles are, what they can do, right? We have tons of video in place to be able to kind of whet the appetite for people that don't want to deep dive or don't want to read. But absolutely, we want to get more thought leadership up there in 2023 as far as where the market is going, where it's headed. Because if you look at autonomous robots, right, and even automated robots, and there's a difference between those two. is that only 1% of the market right now is actually using that. If you look at the 5 million different forklifts that are out there today being used, worldwide, only 1% of those are being robotized at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Now, I think it's a very, obviously we're coming from a marketing angle, and now if we look at the page, you talked about content. What have you learned over the years when it comes to converting, on these types of products on the website? I mean, there's different conversion goals. You can estimate an ROI, you can book a call, you can actually purchase. What have you found to be methods, tools, approaches that help to drive conversions on, in this more complex products, I would say, on the web?
Yeah, well, I mean, the product is complex and it isn't, right? I mean, that's one of our things that we're trying to show the world is that how simple it is actually to make this move over into automation, right? Because that's the biggest inhibitor right now. Everybody knows what a forklift is. They've been using them for years. A lot of people know what automated forklifts are, or automated guided vehicles are. And again, that's where I say we're different in the sense that we don't require any infrastructure changes to your warehouse to be able to move the goods around with the robots, right? We use LiDAR and we use SLAM navigation. So there's no changes to your existing infrastructure, no reflectors, no guide wires, things like that. And that's the biggest educational hurdle that we have right now, is telling people this, this very distinct difference in how the technology has evolved in recent years. So I would say, it's a twofold factor of getting people to understand this change and this seismic shift in the technology, and then getting them into the product page, right? And then getting them to understand, is there that strong interest? Are they really ready to make the move and convert? We make the process simple, though, and that's the biggest inhibitor right now is people have a fear of change, right? They know they can just keep doing things the way they've been doing them with their workforce, assuming they can hire the people, which again, a lot of people are struggling to even hire warehouse workers right now. But we need them to understand that it's not a big, scary process to make this move.
That makes complete sense. Very interesting. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk with you a little bit about your journey as a marketer a little bit. So we spoke about the company, spoke about the product. What I'm curious is, now that you're in that very specific industry, where do you personally like to educate yourself as a marketer? There's so much, content for marketers out there, books, podcasts, blogs, you name it. Where do you find high quality information for yourself?
High quality information for myself. I would say for years it was podcasts like this one. But that's shifted, especially since the pandemic, and I would say the rise of Slack. So, I mean, I find a lot of information. I'm probably part of, I don't know, 5 or 6 at least different Slack channels right now that are specific to marketers. And that's where I find a lot of the best information.
Makes sense.
As well as on LinkedIn, obviously. But LinkedIn, we're all in this game of kind of promoting our companies half the time, and then promoting ourselves and what we want to learn in marketing the other half of the time. Slack seems primarily dedicated to the more real conversations at the moment.
Very cool. And really good to put the distinction out there. Couple of rapid fire questions to wrap it up for today. Are you ready for those?
Let's go.
What is the last book you read or the last podcast you listened to?
Well, okay. So I'm a terrible sci-fi nerd. So the last book I actually and honestly read was Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline. The last marketing one I read was The Giants one by Malcolm Gladwell.
What's one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
One single thing is we're focused on right now is growth. We've moved from a indirect sales model in 2022, primarily through partners, to a direct sales model. So we're really trying to support that growth right now of saying, buy directly from Balyo.
If there would be no boundaries in tech and you have a magic wand, what's the one thing you fix for your role as a marketer?
I think I'm going to say the same thing as most of the other guests you've had on this podcast, because I listened to a few of them before I came on, and it's data and attribution.
Data and attribution. What is it for you in attribution? Because you're right, we hear it a lot. What is the types of questions you actually want to answer? What's the actual information that is missing? What actionable pieces would you take from that information?
I'll tell you, Lucas, we expend a lot of energy in marketing in the buyer's journey. And I think there's a bit of a fallacy in our minds right now about we build it as a linear path because that's pretty much what our human brains are capable of constructing and congealing. And it's a fallacy in the sense that not everybody is on a linear path.
Mm.
Right. And so what I want is an attribution that's very similar to ABM in that I want to know who the person is, what materials they've imbibed, and then be able to target and focus them where they are within the buyer's journey. And right now, most of our metrics tools are just this general congealed mess of information that just kind of get thrown at us. 5,000 users went to this page, and maybe you can figure out who that person is if they've interacted with you before. But as you let off in the beginning of this podcast, we don't know who 98% of those people are, right? Not everybody raises their hand and fills out a registration form, but I still want to identify those people. And I understand privacy laws and everything else, and the issues with that. But to serve the market better, to serve people the content we want, we need the tools and understanding of who they are.
Very last question. If today would be your very first day joining Balyo, what's the one advice you give yourself for that journey?
If today was my very first day of joining Balyo, well, I only joined Balyo about 6 months ago, so I can kind of go back to that point in time. And it's education about this market so I can better serve in the materials that they want, right? It's an understanding of what this all is. If I take that question and I flip it back to what's the very first thing I would want to know if I'm starting out my career like I was 20 years ago, it is absolutely what is this digital landscape, and stay on top of the fact that it is always constantly evolving, and to be able to invest in the tools that allow you to be able to best identify, like I said, with my magic wand and wish list, it's really about identifying who your buyers are and what they need at that exact moment.
Rob, I really appreciate you took the time with us today to be a guest on the show. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting, all that we discussed about Balyo, what's the one thing they should remember?
Don't fear change. Change is coming, change always happens, and you've got to be able to change your tools and your operations to be able to manage what's going to hit you from a business perspective.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on the show.
Thank you, Lucas.